Welcome to the Human Potential Podcast. So you are now participating in a dialogue where, with an open mind, its content will likely change your life as we interview guests with extraordinary knowledge and experiences. So you're here because you seek to find and go beyond your own human potential limits. And through the education, motivation, or inspiration in this podcast interview, we invite you to leap into action and take the steps to explore the notion of what human potential actually is. And today's guest is none other than the extraordinary Solla Pizzuto. And Solla Pizzuto, she is a global wellness educator and a professional holistic practitioner. And she has plenty of experience in medicine, psychology, therapeutic, bodywork, meditation, and ancient Taoist energy and longevity practices. Her global workshops, private sessions, and consultations awaken people to empower their lives through the mastery of personal wealth, wellness, sexual vitality, practices of conscious connection, and love. Solla has a unique, diverse background that includes serving as a combat medic in the U.S. Army. That's amazing. Being a nurse in obstetrics and gynecology, pediatrics, geriatrics, academic studies in pre-medicine, a master's degree in spiritual psychology, as well as studies in various forms of meditation, certifications in yoga, nutrition, and a wide variety of therapeutic healing bodywork modalities. As a universal healing Tao instructor and Tantra practitioner, she has had extensive training and certifications by numerous legendary teachers, they really are, including Taoist Grandmaster Mantak Chia, Tantra Master Charles Muir, and Dawn Cartwright. Additionally, Solla is a highly sought-after holistic practitioner for her Advanced Mastery Level 5 Chi Sung Life Pulse Massage and Kar Sai Nate Sung expertise. Her work across the globe integrates more than 20 years of experience into a series of simple but powerful practices designed to help awaken people all over the world to master their health, empower their lives, increase their sexual vitality, and experience the deep and lasting rewards of intimacy. So without further ado, Solla, welcome, Solla.
Well, hello there.
So nice to have you here. We're finally recording our conversation live. And yeah, it's such a pleasure, such a blessing to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Sweet. So tell me now a little bit about your history of how you came to be who you are. I mean, talk to me about your childhood. You're descendant of Koreans or something, and you're half American. What was it like growing up in America and your background?
Well, let's start with, I was actually born, yes, indeed, in Korea, South Korea. And then I arrived here when I was very young, 3 years old, in fact. And so therefore, pretty much acclimatized to the American way, but still kept the root of my culture very strong in me, my Korean roots. And culturally, having the mix of both growing up, but primarily, there's an old saying with the Koreans, you can't take the Korean out of the Korean, no matter where you are. So, food-wise, certain expressions, even though they're very Korean, and belief systems are deeply rooted, even though I'm very much an American as well. So yeah, that's as I think about it more and more, there's such a deep appreciation for the culture because growing up, I grew up with Chinese medicine, and in our household, for example, nobody got sick. We all grew up with herbs and medicinal ways to prevent diseases and childhood, sicknesses. I can't remember honestly when I was ever sick as a child, growing up this way. So I'm very grateful for that. So hence, what I do in life, it's just natural, to think in ways to prevent disease rather than waiting to get there and then trying to solve the issues of how to release the disease from the body. I'm always thinking in terms, even as a young child, of ways to prevent it, and quite naturally, just by being a Korean.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So you grew up with this already in a tradition of health, in a tradition. You were very keen, attuned to the Eastern wisdom.
Absolutely, yeah. And it was just natural. It wasn't any intentional kinds of thoughts. It was just how it was, in our household.
I see. Interesting. But and then at the same time, you're in America. And just before the call, you and I were talking about the interview that we'll talk a little bit about him in a minute. Grandmaster Mantak Chia, whom you studied with for a number of years. And he was being interviewed by Brian Rose from London, Rio. And and what they are discussing was, many things to do with the healing Tao. But one of the key things explored is how in America, and Brian is American too. So in America, not just in America, in the Western world, there's a kind of understanding of medicine, understanding of philosophy, a kind of orientation towards reality, towards what's real. And in the East is very different, So they're discussing that, and even the terms in the Tao. Master Mantak was talking about how in the West, a term for Qi. So the idea of a Qi exists in the East is very known. In India, they call it prana, but in the West, it's called electromagnetism or electromagnetism. So what was it like to be part of a culture that has ideas that are totally different from the Western world? But you were growing up in the Western world. So what was it like to hold that special knowledge and be in a world around you where it's kind of, they wouldn't believe the things that, a lot of people hearing this, for example, oh, she never had disease, she was never sick. A lot of people be like, surely she had cold, surely she got diseases. You know what I mean? What was it like growing up in this context?
Well, a lot of it has to do with, of course, genetics, right? There's a big play in the genetics, because not everybody in my household was like me,
Okay, right.
there are other members in my family that did get sick.
All right. Okay.
But as far as I know, from my own personal experience in sharing, is that I can't remember being sick. And for me, I gravitated naturally to the herbs and to the tinctures that my grandmother had made for us. And for example, in our household, I didn't eat cookies and cakes for dessert. My dessert versions were fresh fruit after dinner, and and soups and broths, and bone broth was a natural thing in our house way before bone broth became a thing.
Wow.
So yeah, and and those are just, for me, it was just natural. I didn't actually think we were doing anything special at all. My mentality at the time was, oh, this is just how we are in our household, and so but yeah, in coming back to today's generation of how people are, I feel, even though there's a big boom in the medicinal and the drugs, the drug industry, and there's medication for everything now, mental, emotional, physical, you name it, right? There's a medication for it. However, even with the medical community, I do see that there is a acceptance, in spite of all that, of the natural ways, of herbs and acupuncture and alternative ways to bring wellness and health and vitality. It's not, I don't feel there's a big resistance in the medical community. I think there's a sort of a subtle way that there's more in some communities more than others, but there's an acceptance in spite of everything.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I see that. I mean, I guess we, each one of us, live our environments. I'm considering a lot of people watching this podcast. You know, each one of us have an environment. So this is one of the things I gathered from the interview with Mantak and Brian, because my understanding with Mantak over, I mean, for how many decades he's been teaching, a lot of people that come to the Taoist Center in Thailand, the Tao Gardens,
Yes.
a lot of them will be doctors, Western doctors, highly trained individuals. It's a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
high level environment. So he would be meeting a lot of people like that. But I would imagine a lot of people, like even myself to some degree, I'm not part of the Western medicine community. So I understand that a lot of people in the world are not connected to this bridging that is happening in the world between East and West. And I say this because when I started on my journey towards transformation, healing, coming to understand what the self is, really that kind of inner journey, back in 2007, 2008, when we talked about yoga, it was certainly something that mostly women did it. And it was like really a fad. It was not even a fad. It was just some kind of funny thing. And I mean, it's been 10 years since I began my yoga journey then. And now it's like so popular. It's so widespread. Everybody's doing it. Even people like Joe Rogan, that I follow, the biggest podcast in the world. Army dudes getting into yoga. Another one that I follow is David Goggins. So it's like there is a kind of bridging of Eastern wisdom and Western. And so that's what I guess you're talking about. How what can you tell me from somebody who's been on both sides? You know, you're fully comfortable with the East and West, and you probably have noticed this evolution. What does it look like to you to have started all this when nobody was doing it, and now it's so popular?
I really do think that there's a benefit to both. There's a benefit to the Western ways of handling medicine and protocols and, you know, surgeries. And then there's also a benefit, of course, to alternative healing. So the two of them coming together is wonderful. You know, I don't really feel like there's one way to solve all the issues of everyone's makeup, right? Because it's so intricate with everyone's emotional, physical, and mental. And having a cooperative of both Western and Eastern is beautiful. It's actually a very beautiful union. And the doctors that embrace that, they're doing wonderfully. You know, there's all these wellness centers that are popping up that actually does bring the elements of those two schools of teachings and ways of taking care of, you know, the and ways of taking care of people. And those centers are doing really wonderfully. So, in fact, at the Tao Gardens, we have what's called the Bagua Center, and it's a world-renowned, state-of-the-art facility where both Western and Eastern doctors come in, and they will treat people for various conditions and situations, and it works great.
Yeah, integrative medicine. And the interesting thing too, you were in very interesting areas. You were actually a nurse in gynecology, pediatrics. So you understand. I mean, you've even studied pre-medicine academically. So you have a lot of experience with that too. Tell me a little bit about this story with a combat medic in the U.S. Army. That's pretty hardcore. You know, as a tantric woman, as a woman of like talking about love, and yet you're like in the U.S. Army. What happened there?
I look at it as opening the heart in many ways, right?
Okay.
in the tantric and Tao, we open our hearts to ourselves and to our beloveds, and then therefore to the communities around. and then to the world, right? That's a bigger impact. And in the military, when I enlisted as a young adolescent, it was in the light of really caregiving in a different way. At the time, there were a number of reasons why I willingly joined the military. And part of that has to do with taking care of myself and being autonomous with my parents and putting myself through college and putting myself through medical school. So those were the initial motivations. And then once I got in and I worked in the hospitals, it was really great because I really did resonate with caregiving in a way that not only saves lives, but there's such an openness in my heart at such a young age. There's an opening of the heart that I really do appreciate. And that carried over through the rest of my life. And maybe, you know, you could look at it in the world of Tantra, we open our hearts and we're open to receiving the blessing of love and sharing the blessing of love. I experienced that at a very young age in the military, in that caregiving arena and setting. It was all laid out for me, you know, and all I had to do was show up.
This is beautiful. Yeah. This is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, interestingly, it just came to me. I just checked it out here online. There's a famous movie, Hollywood, that was made recently. It's actually directed by Mel Gibson. You probably know the one called Hacksaw Ridge. Have you seen that movie?
No, I can't say that I have.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, it's probably one of my favorites. And it's the real life story of this this guy. I don't know if he's the 50s or whenever, and he's a young guy, and he has his life experiences, and he's like a Christian or something. You know, he's a real devout Christian, and he decides to join the army. But due to his childhood like trauma, he almost killed his brother fighting. You know, and he promised. He had a revelation by Christ or whatever, by the divine, and he vowed to never kill. You know, because one of the things in the Bible somewhere, thou shalt never kill, thou shalt not kill. But what he wanted to do was he wanted to go to the war, Vietnam War, and but he promised never to kill. And his idea was to be a combat medic. And the real life story is when they found out, when they actually tried to teach him how to shoot, he refused to pick up a gun. And then it was like a whole story of them trying to get him out of the army, trying to get him in prison. And he managed to go through the army. He managed to get accepted because he went against the rules. And then when he's at war, it's a real story. He saves like hundreds of soldiers, like he miraculously, to the point where like they wouldn't fight unless he was there with them, you know? So very, very, very interesting that you were there with kind of this divine sort of ambition or intention in war, right? So this brings me to the idea of the Tao, of like the black and the white. Mantek Chia talking about this is very interesting in the interview with Brian, where I was surprised by what he said. Tell me about this, the Tao and the black and white, because Master Mantek Chia was talking about hate and how hate is okay. Hate must be accepted. What is the Tao's then? Tell me, can you explain about this love and hate thing? Because you're in the zone of war, bringing love. Like, is this relating with the Tao? Like, what's happening? What's happening?
The way that without looking at that interview that you're referring to, the way that I could interpret is the way that I know. And I can't speak for Master Chia.
Right.
But what I can say is that when Master Chia teaches us about emotions, and we go inward in our body, what's called inner alchemy, we have a whole number of work on how to alter the inner workings of our bodies. And it's very much, in the Taoist sense, it's very much connected to the outer universe. The outer universe meaning the stars and the solar systems and everything above us that's in
Wow.
existence.
Okay.
We also have a version of cosmic version of that in our bodies, and it's referred to as the inner heavenly universe.
Inner heavenly universe. Wow.
And inside of our inner heavenly universe, we have organ systems, intricate organ systems. And within the organ systems, there is emotions that are charged inside of us.
All right.
And some of these emotions might be considered negative in the way that they're looked at. And other communities don't want to use the word negative. So they are just other essences. We can put it this way.
Oh, all
So
right.
we don't put a value to it, whether it's positive or negative. We can just say they're essences of us. And some of those essences might be hate and frustration and rage and impatience. All of those things that we have, right?
Yeah.
On the positive end, or on the lighter end, there's also essences that has to do with compassion and love and gentleness, kindness, forgiveness. And those are also parts of our charges that are stored in our bodies. So, for instance, in our heart, one might think, when they think of a heart, they think, oh wow, heart, that must be all about love. Automatically love, right? Oh, that might be about compassion and joy and spirit and fire. The heart and the fire.
Right.
Passion, right?
Yeah, the
So,
lion energy.
right? So automatically, many people might respond, okay, when they think of the heart, they think of all of these attributes. However, maybe those essences that might not be so readily received is that the heart has the charges of hate and impatience and deep, deep rage. These are also things that reside in the heart.
Wow.
And so when we recognize that we do have these sort of the yin and yang versions of ourselves, right? The polarities, the hate, and yet on the other side of that is love and compassion and kindness, right? So
Wow.
this could take us right into these meditative principles that the Tao is very strong in the Tao teachings of what's called the inner smile.
Oh,
and the inner smile is a meditation that we practice that helps us transform these qualities that we have inside of our bodies, such as hate and love. We can transform the state of our emotions, those charges. For example, let's take hate and transform it to love. And there's certain there's certain breathing techniques, there's certain sound healing techniques to discharge those emotions out of our bodies. There's sound, movement, and breath. And those three ingredients are key ingredients to every kind of practices out there, whether it's yogic, whether it's tantric, whether it's Tao, Qigong, Tai Chi. Those three key elements are the things that move and alchemize our bodies and can transform things.
Sound, movement, and breath.
So when we have sound, movement, and breath, which we do a lot in the Tao practice, we can literally discharge these emotions that doesn't serve us and transform it to emotions that does serve us. such as
Right.
kindness and forgiveness and love.
Wow, this is amazing. This is amazing. Thank you for this answer. I mean, it's more detailed than Mastermind like cheers. So, yeah, I'm
Well,
really,
yeah.
uh,
Here's the thing. Here's the thing about the old sages and the old masters from ancient times. 5,000.
mm,
Lao Tzu and people in current times like Master Montauk Chia.
mm,
The Asian culture is that if you've noticed,
mm,
there's very little words, but the
right.
very little words have so much depth and
Yeah,
so much meaning. It's incredible. And
right,
oftentimes it makes people sit there and ponder, oh my God, what was that?
right.
And it just makes them think. And this is what's missing in today's society. Everybody wants so much information. It's
Yeah,
just when we have an overload of information that it almost, in a sense, there's like sort of, I'm going to use the term because I see it a lot, but there's
mm,
a dummying down.
mm,
There's a dummying down of our thinking process
right.
because we're not taught to think. We're only taught to look
Mm,
and read what's out there and take in all this data.
mm,
So we're taking in data, but it doesn't make us think. We're just
sure.
sort of spoon-fed. We're spoon-fed the information, and then okay, and then and we look at it. Okay, now we have knowledge, right? Because we've been spoon-fed the information.
Mm,
However, in the olden days, you know, the way that information was passed on was very little information passed on to the disciples, for instance.
yeah.
And the way in which the disciples learn the craft and the mastering is by the doing.
Perfect. Yeah,
You need to do, and you need to experience, and you need to feel it right down to the bones. And
right.
then, and only then you know the information.
Yeah.
And so the actual telling and the information was very little, actually, just
Yeah.
like little tidbits.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really getting, I'm so glad you're saying this because I want to highlight again for the viewers watching this. I mean, in the introduction to this podcast, I talk about how the knowledge and experiences of others. So together, we through action. So rather than
Mhm.
just listening to this incredible knowledge by Sola, it's an invitation for people to go and then search. If you're watching this now, after this interview, go on YouTube, go on Sola's website, solawellness.com, and find action, find a practice, because otherwise it's just on the ideational realm. It almost like it's abstract. You want to make this
Mhm.
a reality in your being, right?
Well, I always say to people that that seek knowledge and seek information. When I'm teaching a workshop or I'm working with an individual privately and helping them through various practices, what I share with people is the only truth that's alive and well in anyone is by their actual practicing and
Mm,
seeing how it serves their body and it
mm,
serves them and how it resonates. And they are their own laboratory of experimentation.
mm. This is huge. This is huge
Right?
for the viewers to understand that they are their own laboratory, like
Mm.
inside. I mean, as we discuss this, I always think, even with the other guests I've interviewed, I think to this when Angelo was doing his research and he was like a young guy, like like really not knowledgeable. I knew nothing of these things, right? I was 2007 online. I came across stuff. It would make me scared. I remember, I'll tell you this. I remember I found, I was like on these crazy journeys from website to website. I couldn't sleep. I was like seeking knowledge because like a bit like an academic, was at university. And I eventually came across this video of this Indian guy. I didn't know any Indian person or anything like that. And he is in some kind of restaurant in London. I remember the details. And all this information was like opening my mind, ancient societies, ancient culture like the Chinese. I was getting bits and bobs here and there. And it got to a point where I was like just about dealing with it. But then this guy talks about, I think he was a yogi. And I was like, what is a yogi doing in the Western world? I thought they were only in India. But anyway, he begins to talk in this conversation in the restaurant about how he can feel each of his organs in his body. Mm-hmm. And I remember, Sola, I got scared of that information. Seriously, it created for me what I now understand to be like cognitive dissonance, which is when our pillars of reality are so fixed that when we hear something that is extraneous to what seems real to us, we can't process it and we get scared. So, that's why I think it's so amazing what you're saying about us being the experiment, because unless we do that experiment inside, it can seem like a scary thing. Like, what are they talking about? Feeling your organs?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's so true in also the taking in the experiences, right? And in this, what I'm noticing also over the last couple of years of my teachings, what I'm as I'm debriefing and thinking and sorting out in my mind, like, what is the jewel that I've learned is that people take in they learn by very small increments.
Okay.
And so sometimes when there's so much content and there's so much that wants to be shared, actually dissecting each of it in the most simplest form, literally, has such a profoundness in the actual absorption of people actually taking it in. It is incredible. And in my own practice, I've slowed way down. Like, in the beginning when I used to teach, I say, oh my gosh, I have this and this, A, B, C, D, F, and I want to teach all these things, and do it all in do it all in a weekend. They need to do all, because you're thinking, this is what we're used to, right? Is we want to give value to our offerings, right? We want to give value, and this is how we're learning things, right? This is how consumers buy things. They want to buy things that the most bang for their bucks, right? So, and I noticed, oh my God, that is, even in my own way of learning, I've come to my own appreciation that I learn in the most very subtle and in the most simplistic way, actually, and it's very profound and it's long lasting. Just like the old sages, when they give you the little tidbits and you sit there and you have to think about it for days on end, and I noticed that, wow. And now in my individual coaching and teachings, I go super, super slow. And in that process, it's amazing, because what's that resulted with is people coming in long-term, very long-term. I have long-term, students or clients that have just continuously been evolving their practices and really taking it in, and like smelling the roses and stopping and really picking it up and noticing the texture of the rose and smelling it in different angles and taking it and looking at it in different lighting of the way the sun is lighting that rose, and closing the eyes and just, this is the way that they're learning, and this is the way that I'm offering the teachings now.
Oh, wow.
And it's just been beautiful. My own process, and yeah. So there's definitely something to be said for the old sages and the old masters, I think as we're just coming back in full circle, this day in technology and over avalanche of information that we're bombarded with day in, day out, going back to the simple and more quality is it's just price. It's just it's very precious.
Mm. There's so much. There's so much depth to what you're saying. There's so much meaning that, I mean, it's similar. Only by taking the time to go deep, like you're saying, when the master says something simple, you can revisit maybe years later and renew, like see the rose in new ways. And we can't tell people how to see the world, the rose. It happens, right? It's an inner thing. So can you tell me a little bit more about this rose? Because I think, in fact, this was one of the things I wanted to ask you before already when I was setting up this interview. It seems important. It's a question that came to me by inspiration. And for you to tell me what flowers mean, you know, on that kind of metaphorical sense too, like you just created a sort of metaphor of smelling the roses, but it's not just literally picking up a rose. It's almost like you could say probably the inner smile is a rose, the practices is a rose. What is a rose to you? Like, just dive into, or not.
I'll give you an example of something that just happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay,
great.
let's take it where it's fresh.
Okay.
Fresh
rose.
Let's do a fresh rose. So, I'm gonna just say client A. All right, this is how I'm gonna describe. So client A comes in and says, and is sharing her practices, her or his. And we keep it completely anonymous.
Yeah, and I can tell you determined anonymity.
Yeah, this is very sacred for me to keep everyone's privacy. This is you know, something that has been throughout my whole professional practices, to keep the privacy. So going back, so let's say client A, his or her, they are ecstatic about their practices, their home practices, the self-care, and all of this and that. And yet there's something that doesn't seem fully comfortable. There's a discomfort in their self-care practice. And so we sit down and I say to this person, we're going to do a little game. And I want you to put out your hand, and I'm going to put my hand onto your hand. And what I'd like you to do is take a moment to close your eyes and just feel the hand that is placed onto your hand. And when you do, I'd like you to bring in your childlike curiosity and forget that this hand actually belongs to me, but it's just an object that's placed into your hand. And in your childlike curiosity, I'd like you to discover things about this object, how it feels, this texture, you know, the lines, the folds, the temperature, everything and anything that you're naturally noticing. And you're just going to take that moment to do so, okay? So a little moment goes by, and then I say, okay, now open your eyes. And then what did you discover? And then I say next, when you go home tonight, I'd like you to remember this moment. And in the childlike curiosity, this is how I want you to do your self-care practice.
Mm.
and just the noticing of your body parts in this way.
Wow. Oh my God. Amazing.
Yeah, right?
Right. Okay, look. Let's dive a little bit deeper here. Let's go a little bit concrete, because you're using the word self-care. I know what that means. Um uh,
Well, self-care could be many things, because there's so many
okay.
teachings that I do. So self-care could mean tuning into harmonizing their organs,
Okay,
massaging their
right.
own body.
Yeah, right.
Self-care could mean unblocking some congestions,
Mm,
in their structure in certain parts of their bodies.
right.
Self-care could be a pleasurable experience in which they're tapping into their sexual centers
Right.
and finding certain meridian points. And it's all in the light of healing, actually. There's therapy, healing, and there's pleasure. Those three elements. And a lot of the self-care components are those. They have therapeutic applications, they have healing, and there's pleasure.
Okay.
But what happens is that most people, when they're doing something for themselves, it's very goal oriented.
Mm.
Like, I have to do something. I have to
Right.
get results. I have to
Can
get
we
results. Mm-hmm.
can we
And
talk about this in the
yeah,
context of, like, can we just to make it concrete, can we talk about like sex and sexuality? Because I know
sure.
a lot of men watching this, not just men but women as well.
Mm-hmm,
You're a
mm-hmm.
tantra expert, sex. Can we kind of talk about these things in the context of sexuality? Because you just mentioned
Yeah.
the goal
Mm-hmm,
orientation. A lot of
mm-hmm,
men
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
think it's
mm-hmm.
about their orgasm, all right, or maybe even like getting to giving the woman orgasm, right? Tell me, yeah, please continue in the context
Okay,
of sex.
so here's the lesson, because I don't want you to miss the lesson about this whole tidbit of the noticing
The flower,
and
yeah.
and the slowing down and the flower,
Mm,
is that when that happens, it becomes less of a goal orientated mindset, and it
mm.
becomes, okay, now I'm going to tune into my body and find and soak in and taste the subtleness of what I'm experiencing from touching myself.
Right.
And there is actually no goals. There's only the self-discovery. And that's the missing piece. And so you take that, let's say, to your beloved, and you're making love.
Mm.
A lot of times, both men and women will think of some sort of goal orientation. The men having to perform, for example,
Having to
or
perform,
having,
having to be like
right?
really strong,
Or
or
having
the
to,
man.
right? Yeah, be the man, and, and sustain their erection for a long period of time so that, they feel like the woman is satisfied, for example. And the
Right.
woman, if she's got issues with orgasm, for example, then, she might feel like she might need to appease him by maybe faking it, right?
Mm. Big issue. A lot of men think they
Right,
have to be like
yeah.
this fuck machine,
Mm-hmm,
and a
mm-hmm,
lot of
mm-hmm,
women feel like they have to be this orgasm machine,
mm-hmm.
right?
So this is all in the mindset of goal orientation. Okay, we need to make something happen, right? We both
Mm.
need to get into orgasm,
Mm.
and we both need to, have all these fireworks going on. Otherwise, if this doesn't happen, then the underlying thought is, oh, we failed. We're both a failure.
Right.
Okay, but what's missing in that harshness? There's a harshness to that. And it
Mm.
takes people out of their body, it takes people out of their essence, it takes people out of smelling that rose.
Wow.
And
What a
what they're doing,
sentence.
what they're doing is they're just plucking that rose and moving on. They didn't even
They're,
smell it.
they're
They just
plucking the
plucked it and said,
rose.
"Oh, hey, look at it, there's a rose. Hey, man!" And then they plucked it.
Oh man.
So in smelling the rose, let's go back to that analogy. If
Right.
one was to truly, and even the analogy with the client A, you know, their experimentation of their own body, right? And feeling and sensing and experiencing and pleasuring and really feeling the pleasure, not because somebody told them to. Them actually feeling their own pleasure and giving themselves a permission to do so. That's huge. A lot of people are, I mean, that's a whole nother class right there about boundaries, personal boundaries, consent, and, you know, being okay with certain things happening to yourselves, you doing or you receiving. You know, this is a whole other issue, I mean, we can spend 2, 4, 10 hours on that, just that alone.
Wow.
But the thing is, going back to the feeling, if one was to give permission to themselves by these practices and making it their set point, their natural state of being, and every part of their body has been already repatternized to accept that reality.
Repatternized.
If they were practiced and reset themselves, and then they come into a situation where they're going to make love to someone, they're going to be smelling the roses the whole time. There's no goal orientation at all. There is only what is, the juiciness of what is. And when this is felt and seen by the other person naturally falls into your field.
Falls into your field.
It just becomes a natural progression. Because human beings, I believe, have a sixth sense and very intuitive sense about them. And if they were given the opportunity to cultivate that, their true essence just comes out. You know, that Buddha nature that often is referred, right, of our true Buddha nature, of all the wonderful attributes and virtues that we all possess, right from our birthright, right, coming into this world. Joyous and happy and blissful and love, you know, you see little babies, you know, all you see in their eyes is pure love, nothing else but pureness. You know, we were all that way, and we still are.
We're flowers, right? That's the metaphor. The Buddha nature, the presence, it's the flower thing that and if we are too goal oriented, we cut the connection with that.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right. And so this takes practice. This inner work,
boom,
inner alchemy, changing the inner workings of your mindset, allowing the monkey mind to dissolve so that you can get into your body and you can start to feel things. How wonderful is that, you know? And to be able to offer that kind of blessing to your beloved, it's a gift.
Right. So it takes practice. We're going back to the action. So I just to kind of almost round it up here.
Yes.
Imagine, like, you know, I want to bring this to a lot of men. You know, in fact, Solla and I are looking to organize a retreat to Bhutan, a sexual education retreat. So I'd like a lot of men to listen to this message. You described it now as like reworking the inner mechanism of ourselves, right?
There's an unwinding process.
Unwinding process, okay.
And a rewiring process.
All right, two different things: an unwinding and a rewiring.
So you've got to unwind all the armoring and blockages and the fear and the, you know, all the thickness that we have built around, you know, people that has built around themselves.
Okay.
And this mass of thickness is almost like a protective shield for them, you know, and it prevents them from truly stepping into their true power.
This may be the first time somebody's listening to this, by the way, right? Can you imagine, like, you have a sense of self and suddenly you hear an expert saying you have, so what is that then? Are they subconscious patterns, negative patterns? What is that? This blockages?
It's just, you know, mistrust and fear and And hurt, you know, many people that have had issues with hurt and abandonment and all of those things from early childhood and on, and even before that, even in fetal stages, they are they're almost like we call it like old shadows, right? And they're put inside a jar with the lid very tightly screwed, and they're inside of a person's being. And
Mm.
oftentimes they just stay there because people don't have time to deal with it. You know, they want to just move on and forget about their past. It's
Mm.
so much easier to just to move on. However, if a person is not in touch with their shadows, their shadow side, you know, there's that yin and yang again, the white and the black,
Mm.
the polarities that every one
Mm.
of us has. We all have a shadow side of us.
Mm.
And some of that is lineage, even passed down through lineage.
Mm.
So, in spite of where we are, how much we think we've evolved, there is that in existence.
Mm.
And something happens when a person opens their heart. Then those shadows that have been, you know, jarred up with the lid tightly screwed, the lid starts to undo itself,
Mm.
unbeknownst to us.
Is
And
this
the
a
shadows
rewiring?
and the shadows will start to come up.
Oh,
and
oh,
all and all of the old history and the trauma and the,
oh,
you
God.
know, and all of the things that happened in past, you know, just start to creep up, you know. And
That's the unwinding, is it?
that's the well, yeah. And the unwinding process is to find that, embrace it,
Okay.
and then invite the transformation of all of the things that serve us
Mm.
to continue our life force and our vitality and our wellness and bring us to the state of longevity
I love
and
hearing
have.
what you're saying. I love hearing what you're saying because it's like, you know, I think it's very important for the viewers to understand. It's just a basic knowledge that anything worthwhile is not for free. It comes with a process.
It
You know,
does.
when we want to acquire, when
Hmm.
we want to elevate, evolve, there's a kind of natural challenge, there's a kind of suffering. So it seems like to find this flower, to do the unwinding, to do the rewiring, we're still in
Hmm.
the unwinding. There
You
is a
can't.
kind of, uh,
Well, here's the thing, and this
mm,
is the big difference between like a motivational seminar or some, you know, hey, you know, very aggressive, hey, you know, you're gonna do this,
let's
you're gonna
do
do that.
it. Yeah.
That do it kind of.
Yeah. It's very
Well,
American, actually. Yeah.
right, isn't it?
Tony
And it seems
Robbins.
right. It seems like, oh yeah, yeah, you know, let me get all charged up, let me get my adrenaline flowing, and let me, you know, let's do it, you know. However,
That's me these
however,
days. Let's work out. Let's beast mode on. Yeah. Yeah.
however, if after that period runs
Mm.
out, after the excitement period runs out,
Right.
then you're left again, once again, to face yourself.
Mm.
And then what do? You know? And you haven't had any inward practices to, again, unwind and uncoil all of those things that's a part of us, and then face it. And it's the only way that can be transformed is that we embrace that part of us. So we do an unwinding, and then from there we create a different set point, and then from there we do a rewiring of ourselves. So then our new reality becomes one in which we have full integrity, and we have such a strong anchoring of our belief that it doesn't matter what's being presented. You know, we can create our own protective life force. This we call a Wei Qi field in the Taoist practice. And this Wei
Mm.
Qi field is very strong, and it's all protective. And so all of this, all of these concepts, all these ideas is practices. And sometimes it takes a long time. I'm going to be
Right.
honest. It takes people 6 months to a year. Some people it takes 10 years to achieve this.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's so worth it, because if you think an average person that's going to be living in this earth for 100 plus years, don't you want to make it worthwhile, for the time that we're living here?
Mm.
And so these practices are an investment for our long-term in our long-term existence. And in the Tao practice, we call it immortality. The practices
Immortality. What a
of
word.
immortality.
Yeah. What a word. This is
Yeah.
huge. I just want to like highlight this because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I really get what you're talking about. I think a lot of people have a lot of people in the Western world, perhaps they lack a kind of sustained realization that there's something called an interpersonal subjectivity, meaning much like there are people that are colorblind, right? Imagine you have a friend who's colorblind, but you don't know. So you see colors, but the person next to you sees kind of dim, black and white. They don't see colors in
Mm-hmm.
the same way. But
Mm-hmm.
you'd never know because you don't see through their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a difference in the way that perception is being experienced in the body. That's just on the visuals. So
Yes.
when you talk about this, I'm just making this point for the viewers to be clear. Sola or whoever you meet, we don't know. We are all living different perceptive existences. This is called the interpersonal subjectivity. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very important for people that are listening to become open to this, because what you're talking about, I mean, immortality as a word, it seems, what does that even mean? But the word, how you're describing everything is coming from a place of knowing or direct experience of transformation. Like you literally have become a different being, right? And I think people need to sign up to that, would you say? Because a lot of people, I feel like there's resistance. I mean, I talk about myself even, I have experiences in yogic tradition, tantric tradition, a little bit of the Tao with you. And yeah, I don't give myself that permission to go all in, to go all the way into full transformation. So what would you say to people that are listening to you and they're interested, they're engaged, but they're still kind of going, I don't know about that. I don't know about energy. I don't know what she's talking about.
Right. So here's the way to look at it. We all need various forms of nourishment.
Mm.
And the easiest way to look at that is your food choices.
Oh, right.
Some people, let's go back to here. So some people might choose to go vegetarian because they feel like this is a food choice that serves their digestion and their energy. And some people might go, okay, wholesome foods with some meats. And some people might just go and drink a lot of green juice. And these are all choices of nourishment, aren't they? Some people might require 8 hours of sleep. This is a nourishment for your body to recharge. And some people might have nourishment from making love, this is their nourishment. Oh, they love it. They want to be ecstatic all the time, and they want to make love all the time, and it makes them feel blissful and wonderful. And these are all forms of nourishment. So when you take a practice, there's mindfulness, there's physical, there's sexuality, all different kinds of practices for nourishment, for nourishing the mind, for nourishing the emotions, for nourishing the physical temple in which we reside, and our sexuality, right? Our creative life force. So when someone is considering doing something that's out of their box,
Right.
they can look at it in terms of, okay, now where do I want to nourish? What
What
part of
area?
me, what part of me needs nourishment right now?
Mm.
And I think that's the way in which to look at it.
To
You know,
begin, right?
any practice, anything out there is
Awesome.
to first look inside and say, what part of me needs nourishment at this
Mm.
moment?
I hope whoever's listening is thinking about that. You know,
So that's the way to look at it.
very nice.
Mm,
Sola, we could talk forever. I know that.
sure.
But our
But now
time
everybody
is
has to come to our workshop, and then they're going to find out all the juice.
exactly. There's like so much knowledge, and so
uh,
much talking about the experience, and experience is the real
mm-hmm,
thing. So
mm-hmm.
we are inviting you, Sola and I are inviting you to join us in the very incredible land of Bhutan. It's an exotic
Bhutan.
space
Oh,
of Bhutan, right?
yeah.
It's like
Good.
Tibet. It's like
Oh my
amazing.
God.
Yeah, very
Now
exciting.
that is a holy land. We're going to take people on this amazing journey in the holy land of Tibet. Isn't that incredible? Hmm.
Very, very special, life
Mm-hmm.
changing to be in such
Yeah.
location. To be, I mean, everyone felt, I'm sure, everyone felt the
Uh-huh.
aliveness of Sola, the wisdom of Sola. She's gonna
And
be
the wisdom
there.
of Angelo too, you know. You're not so shabby yourself in terms of healing.
It's the monk look, is it? With the
Mhm.
shave my head recently. Wonderful. So it's going to be very exciting. It's going to be very powerful. It's going to be my second trip to Bhutan. I've already organized a healing trip there,
Yeah.
retreat. Sola does this around the world. So please come get in touch with us. I am on Facebook as Angelo Marcus human potential coach. My website is angelomarcuscoach.com. Sola, what are the ways that people can reach you online?
They can reach me through my website, solawellness.com, or they can also just Google me on the internet on Google, Solla Pizzuto, and they can find my Instagram. They can find, there's so many ways in which I can be found because I'm a public figure. So all they have to do is input Solla Pizzuto on Google, and for sure they'll be able to reach me one way or the other. I think that's
Yeah.
the easiest way. Yeah.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many good interviews with you, and let's get people into action as well. So, Sola, how about this? Why don't we set up another, maybe an hour interview another week where we talk a little bit about practice, so we can put it on YouTube for people to see. Okay.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah. Let's see what we can do. Also, is maybe some appetizers about what the workshop is going to be all about.
yeah,
This
let's
is
do that.
I'm thinking that we want to do an exclusive, a very selective group of people, you know, and we're going to do a deep dive into all of these practices: mind, body, sexuality, relational, how people could discover sacred sexuality within
Mm,
themselves and with their beloved partners.
mm.
And they're going to go into a journey, an incredible journey together with us.
Super
And so,
fun, super
yeah,
light, super
yeah.
empowering. You know, maybe you're listening to this, you don't understand what the sexual thing. It's about losing fears. It's like coming
And
back
it's
to that
very safe.
lightness of
Yeah,
child. Yeah, safe.
it's going to be a safe and very professional setting. And again, we're going to have a segment about boundaries and consent and all kinds of things, you know, because that's a real big subject in this day and age, about
Mm,
appropriate boundaries and actually having opportunity to be able to identify people's personal boundaries
mm,
and share them out loud. So so many things, actually, so many wonderful things on the table for this workshop, and it's going to be at the end of next year, towards the fall.
yeah, October, November
Yeah,
time. Stay
yeah,
tuned. We're gonna
yeah,
be posting everywhere in our
yeah.
social media.
hmm And the weather there is going to be beautiful around that time. It's not like it's going to be cold, right? In October, November in Tibet is
Yeah,
it's actually
it's
like a spring kind of weather, isn't it?
yeah, it's gonna be beautiful
Springtime.
weather. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
springtime is gonna be beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a special land, and not many people
Yeah.
actually have been there. It's really
Yeah, I have never been
protected.
there.
Well, there you
So
go.
I'm excited.
They're, they're the happiest nation in the world. Happiest nation in the
Mhm.
world. The only country in the world carbon negative because of their leadership. You know,
Yeah,
super
yeah, yeah.
healthy. Like, so really incredible. So stay tuned to more details on what exactly is going to be happening there. A lot of this
Sure.
juiciness, a lot of this wisdom we're going to be sharing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, come follow us
Mm-hmm.
online. And
Mm-hmm.
Sola, again, thank you so much for your time. It's such a pleasure to. I could listen to you like to go
Thank
to sleep.
you.
I could go to sleep listening to you talk.
Many more conversations, but
Yeah.
actually, too, I'm very much into dynamic practices. So
Mm.
just know in advance for the people that are viewing this that the workshop is going to be a lot of doing. It's not going to be sitting down, passive learning. It's you're going to be doing.
Action mode.
It's action mode. Yeah, action
Good.
inside the body and outside.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be exciting.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Okay. Lots of blessings to you and happy holidays, dear Angelo. It's
Yeah,
always a
thank
pleasure
you.
to connect with you.
Yeah, same here. All the best
Hmm.
with you,
Hmm.
and keep on just rocking out hard. You're always traveling. You're always busy
Hmm.
spreading the wisdom.
Hmm.
So I look forward to the next time we connect,
Hmm.
Sola.
I don't think people are realizing this, but Angelo looks very professional with his suit, and he's sitting there. But actually, he's a sage in disguise. So just so y'all know that. All right.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you for the
Mwah.
appreciation. Yeah. So much love. Bye
So
bye.
much love. Bye bye.